I'm sure a couple of more people will be joining in the next couple of minutes, but we can start with the introduction. I think today is a little bit different than the last couple of times for a couple of reasons. Usually here in our webinars at Workpath, we talk about strategy execution and how companies can build their organization, their governance model, their operating model to make strategy execution work, to achieve their goals, to implement their strategies. And today we're going into one particular type of strategy that I think almost every major company we work with has in their strategy deck. And this is about cloud transformations. It's, I think, a particularly challenging, at least it seems like, a particularly challenging part of many companies' strategies nowadays. And for that reason, we said, let's do a deep dive and let's invite some experts. So today we have Inken and Joris from beBOLD here, who work with a lot of companies, also regulated companies, big corporates, finance industry, among others, to share their experience, how you can make a cloud transformation work, where a lot of cloud transformations fail. And yes, I will share 2 or 3 examples from our customers, how they manage their cloud transformations, how they chose a more outcome-oriented approach to strategy, to cloud transformation. But mostly Inken and Joris from beBOLD will be in the lead, and we from Workpath are very happy to host them. So very warm welcome, Inken and Joris.
Thank you very much. Okay, then short introduction. So my name is Inken. I'm a strategy execution consultant at beBOLD, and I'm supporting our clients to set concrete and measurable goals, and also to then establish the right formats and structure to bring those goals into execution. And yeah, happy to share some of our best practices today with you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Joris. I'm one of the CEOs from beBOLD and also a cloud transformation coach. Maybe 2 sentences about beBOLD. We're a consultancy company from Hamburg. And as Johannes said, we work with a lot of different companies from EOS, Hanseatic Bank, Penio, and Otto. So we have a good mix between bigger corporations, also regulated corporations from insurance companies and bankings, but also on the other hand, more startups like Penio, or companies that are more on the forefront of technical innovation like Otto Versand. And all these companies we help to move into the cloud and to build up the foundation to use cloud in a secure, compliant, and also meaningful way. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and me as host, you already met me before. One of the founders and still part of the leadership team at the Workpath, and very much looking forward to this deep dive today. So as said, Inken and Joris will share a little bit more about why, from their experience, a lot of cloud transformations are failing right now. And then we look into how you can better steer a cloud transformation from both perspectives, how you can build a foundation, but then also how the operating model, this ongoing way of working around the transformation can look like to make it work overall. Last but not least, of course, as always, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. There's definitely going to be a little bit of time for discussion, for questions, but that doesn't mean you have to wait until the end if you have pressing questions. So particularly with me in the co-pilot seat today as a host, I will always check the chat. You can always ask questions and use the chat in real time, and I'll try to coordinate a little bit. If it seems to be pressing and good to answer that, discuss that in the moment, I'll make it part of the conversation. Otherwise, it's already documented there for the Q&A at the end, and you can make sure you won't forget about it. So let's use the chat. Let's make it as interactive as possible. I think those have always been the best online sessions we did in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, let's kick it off. Over to you.
So I think first we wanted to start with the poll. Maybe Johannes, you can also introduce everyone to it.
Yes, in a moment, cloud, like a poll is going to pop up. I hope that works for everyone. For me, it's already there. And to start with the first content pieces, we would love to hear from you as participants where you are on your cloud journey, from you might be getting ready for a cloud transformation, preparing, planning. You're in the middle of it. And we also see companies who take steps backward, who stop their cloud transformations, who are moving back capacities into private cloud at least. So would love to hear where you are on your journey. If you could quickly and anonymously answer the poll here.
Yeah, while this is happening, I would say, or do we see the results immediately? No.
We do.
Ah, okay.
So far, only 1 or 2 respondents. It's anonymous, so please, everyone, participate. If you feel like none of the answers suits your situation, of course, you can also always use the chat. Again, it's just interesting. I think in 1 or 2 pieces of the session, we might also go a little bit deeper into a topic depending on where you are on your journey and what is particularly relevant for you. Yeah.
I would say let's continue because we have really a lot of content brought today, and I really will have a hard time to get through all of it, or we. So
yeah.
All right, so let's start why so many cloud transformations fail. And I would like to start with an interesting fact. 10% of all enterprise IT organizations have a cloud-first strategy. I think this is good news. So a lot of, or most of the companies realized that there is benefit going into the cloud and that it's a meaningful strategic decision to do so. But unfortunately, on the other hand, and that's why we are here today, seems to be that half of the cloud transformations are failures. So many people want to go, but most of them fail in some sort of way. And so it makes sense to look at why might this be the case and what can we do. And as you might have guessed, there are a lot of reasons why a cloud transformation can fail. And basically, you need to consider a cloud transformation is not only a technical transformation, but also a cultural transformation. So there are a lot of reasons, and most of the time it's not the not technical issues or challenges that make a transformation fail, but other things. And from our perspective, not to name many here, but from our perspective, really a core issue we see for most companies is that there is a gap between requirements and execution. And what does this mean? So it means that when we see requirements where you have like a definition of what you want to achieve with cloud, so what's mostly part of the strategy, and what you need to achieve with cloud or to fulfill in order to be allowed to use cloud, what's often formulated in some sort of policy. This is the requirement side. And this side is often not understood well enough on the execution side to really build what it's needed. And also the other way around, that the people who build stuff, mostly technical stuff, often can't explain why what they build matters or is compliant. And so there's really a gap from both sides doing this. And and when we continue, we want to have a deep dive and look a little bit closer why this is the case. But before this, again, a second question to get a little bit more insights from you, and why are you struggling and with your cloud transformation? I think it's a free form, so you can type in whatever comes to mind.
And now it's only one question. I think the last 2 were connected, so also the ones previously answered that one already. Maybe you type in the 1 or 2 words again, then we have it there, and we can show the results right away. You should be able to see the word cloud exactly when you've hit the send button for all participants. Yeah. Communication and mindset so far. Change. Value and alignment, big ones. They seem to come up a couple of times. That's good, because those are exactly topics I think we're going to hear a bit more about in a moment.
Yeah, all right. I would say it's interesting to see when we finish what the word cloud will come up with. But the results so far suggest that what I said, that mainly not the technical challenges are what really concerns people during a cloud transformation, but more other things that are on the communication or non-technical side. And I would like to go a little bit deeper on the gap between requirements and execution. And for us, it's really one of the core issues, as I said, is that goals and guidelines, so the requirements are not clear. What do we mean with this? So what we often see is that goals are not sufficiently gathered or documented, that they're very high level and too abstract to execute, that they're not well known or understood, that they're not measurable, that they're created in isolated silos that don't talk with each other, and that they're really disconnected from the day-to-day work from the people in execution. And what this leads to is often, from our perspective, that there are solutions built that no one needs, that are not allowed to use, or that do not fit together. And to give you some real-world examples of this, we have seen a customer who invested really multiple years of work in building up a centralized Kubernetes container platform. And then when it was finished, realized that from the application landscape, only a couple of applications really fitted into this solution, and 95+% of the other applications needed a different solution, so totally waste. We've seen data platforms built up, beautifully designed, really state-of-the-art work, and shortly before going live, realizing that the data privacy laws in Europe, GDPR or DSGVO, prevent them from using such a platform in the way they thought it up and upfront. And also what we typically see is that we have multiple technology solutions, processes and roles, and nothing is integrated and nothing fits together. And all these examples typically lead to a scenario where not much value is generated or visible during a cloud transformation, but simultaneously with rising costs, because the reality of cloud transformation is it's an investment, it's a big investment, and you will have rising costs during those transformations. When you, on the other hand, have no value that is visible, this leads typically to a management that gets frustrated, that deprioritizes the transformation and stops the funding of such a transformation, what ultimately leads to a transformation that is stuck or even gets aborted. So this is like the strain or the strain of things we typically see happening during a lot of customers. But there are also, of course, companies who do have goals, who do have guidelines. And just to give you this, also something we see that's, and I hinted a little bit towards it, that it's really hard to make value visible during a cloud transformation. And here again, we have to acknowledge that a cloud transformation typically needs 3 to 7 years to really complete. And it's a long time. And it's really important to show up that there's some value in it also during this time. And to give you an example, so because we won't have time to focus on this specific part later on, I'd like to highlight it now. To give you an example, a typical cloud goal for many customers is to reduce their manual and operational efforts within the IT. And the expectation a lot of companies have is that for every application they migrate from on-premise to cloud, the operational effort will decrease, while the operational effort from a workload in the cloud is not so high like on-premise. So that's a typical expectation, and you see from day one value, but the reality often is that on one hand you have a much higher investment on effort in terms of cloud from the beginning. And the other thing is that you really don't see any decreasing operational efforts on-premise until you really shut down the on-premise data center. So it's really hard to measure or to show here value from this perspective. And something we would suggest to be mindful about and how to tackle this is to really differentiate between the perspective on the company or the IT and a workload, and workload means application. So with a different example here with the decrease of infrastructure costs, what's also typically seen is it's of course the same as I showed in the example. To when you see the decreasing of the infrastructure costs, it's really late happening during a transformation because you need to shut down the data center to really have the cost saving boost and factor. So a better way would be to measure the infrastructure costs for every application and to see what are the costs now on premise, and after you migrated it, what are the costs for this specific application now in the cloud. And hopefully, if you're doing it right, then you can measure really a value for this application. That's something you then can communicate and leverage as something to get you through the cloud transformation. But this just as a small sideway for the thing that it's really hard to measure value during a transformation. Now we would like to focus more about the issue we showed before, with that the requirements are not clear, and show you how to get there better. So how to steer a successful cloud transformation. And we think that there are two phases that need to be considered here. And the first is to really build up a foundation in order to steer through a transformation. This is something a lot of companies don't give them that much love and attention as they might need to. And we would like to show you how we do it and what's our best practice approach for this. So to build up the foundation, we typically start with an analytical preparation phase. And this is where we identify what are the existing strategies, the existing requirements, guidelines, or policies the company has, and see what can we find there, what is relevant for cloud. We take these and build up a so-called target pyramid, where we have like a hierarchy of all the relevant strategies, and to in the end derive the cloud goals and guidelines from existing strategies and have a connection between them. And thirdly, to identify all the relevant stakeholder groups that need to be integrated into the transformation, but also specifically into the process of defining the goals and the guidelines you want to need. And typical stakeholder groups are, of course, people from operations within IT and developers, the future users of the cloud, but also people like information security, data privacy, management, business units, and so on. So, and what we typically do then is in the first phase of why cloud, we do different stakeholder workshops. So with every stakeholder group, we do an individual workshop where we bring all the things we prepared and analyzed in the analytical preparation. We bring this into the workshops, but more importantly also we challenge the people in the workshops to come up with what is their perspective from their daily work. Why do we need to go into the cloud? What problems needs to be solved? What goals can be achieved? And what must be executed in order to be compliant? And these typically are formulated into cloud goals and cloud requirements. And what's very important from our perspective is to have a reality check, because oftentimes you identify, let's say, goals that are far in the future only reachable. And I think it's very important to define this, even though it's a long way towards it, to have like a clear goal picture where you want to go to, but maybe you need to define interim steps. What's your roadmap towards this end goal? So this is the why part. And here still, this is what many customers still do. They have like goals and they have requirements, but they are still very high level and not too concrete. So this is why we have a how phase. Again, with every stakeholder group, we do workshops where we try to specify what we did in the cloud goals and requirements part. So we specify objectives into so-called implementation guidelines. The idea is really to build a connection between a high-level goal, like we want to increase security, to something is built technically, And the intermediate part is the implementation guideline. And this might be something like we share nothing principle. So an example would be for every workload gets its own database and it's not shared. This will increase security. This will also map into other goals, but to define some sort of North Star principles that help us to concretize the goals and to give some sort of orientation for the people during implementation. The same we do with cloud requirements. These are also often things that are very high level and abstract, where we concretize those into policies that are very specific, so that some technical person clearly understands the boundaries they have and the way they can define technical concepts. All this is then merged into a cloud big picture. The idea here really is to bring all the concepts from a landing zone, from technical platforms, from roles and processes, so the whole governance construct and the strategy into one matching puzzle, and to make sure that everything fits together. And the last part is a so-called cloud roadmap. And it's also something we see that typically there's not a clear understanding what needs to be done in order to do a cloud transformation or to set up the foundation for a cloud transformation. So this is where a cloud roadmap really can help to have a broad view of the milestones, activities, epics in a sequence that are needed, and also the stakeholders that are involved there in order to build up the foundation you need for a cloud transformation. And as said, I'd like to also give you a little insight into such a target pyramid. And you see here the pyramid, and it's just really high level concept of, you see here a corporate strategy, then you have derived IT strategy on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have like legal requirements and maybe an information security strategy and a data privacy strategy. And all those map into hopefully aligned goals and requirements. But then the challenge we see often is the so-called gap between this and the execution. And as explained on the slide before, there we see the connecting vehicle, the implementation guidelines, the roadmap, and also a policy that has very specific, and also, of course, the aligned goals that are very specific to give the transformation execution boundaries they need. So to continue, we would like to focus only on the goals and on the roadmap because time is running and we need to speed up. And that's why, let's talk about goals, or specifically cloud goals. And you see here a definition, and when you read it, they should be aligned, concrete, measurable, and so on. It's a typical definition you find also for OKRs, and that's why we also here in this setting, because it's obviously a good decision to formulate your cloud goals in such a way. But to get there, I would like to give you an example of a typical challenge when you define cloud goals. This is that we often see conflicting goals. So to get there, what you see here are the typical three stakeholder groups. You have the IT department, who are really focused on getting out of the operational hell. You have compliance groups like data privacy and information security, who are really concerned about what authorities demand for a cloud transformation. And you have like people around business units, management, and developers who struggle around the pressure for change and innovation and how to make the customers happy. And now all of them come up with cloud goals. And the IT department will say, well, we need to decrease complexity, we need to improve infrastructure resilience, we need to reduce IT costs. The compliance people say we want to increase transparency, we want to increase security, we want to decrease risk probability. And the business units say we want to decrease the time to market, increase innovation capabilities, and want to perform as much experiments as possible. And all these goals, we know they are not concrete yet, but all these goals are, from a content perspective, are totally fine. They're correct. It's typical for most of the companies to have such goals. Problem lies in these silos. And when we look at an example, what happens when we pick out these 3 goals and see what happens when we need a solution for provisioning cloud infrastructure. So all these stakeholder groups during the cloud transformation will go to work. They all have their goal. What will they come up with? So the IT will say, okay, we need to decrease complexity. Therefore, we will have a centralized approach how infrastructure is provisioned. And this means we have one single point of contact. There's maybe a ticket system, and there all the people who want to use infrastructure get into this single point of contact and then get the infrastructure. So they can decrease their complexity and handle it, all the demand. The compliance people will say, okay, we need to increase transparency. That's why we come up with a policy where you have to document and approve every change within the infrastructure, also in the cloud infrastructure with a change ticket. Also quite common and typical check for that goal. But what does this mean for the developers and the business units? Actually, they need to wait longer for infrastructure and they have an increased time to market. So it's getting worse for them. They are not achieving their goal. This is because these goals they have are some sort of conflicting. In this way, they're operated and executed here. So what could be a better way? A better way would be to have all those goals. We change nothing with the goals, but all the goals are aligned with everyone. So they're true for everyone. So when they're now, same example, take the same 3 goals, but now they are true for every stakeholder group. What happens now? The IT will say, okay, we need a decentralized approach. So not a centralized, but a decentralized approach where all the people who demand infrastructure will do it by themselves because we have a self-service capability from the cloud provider and we do it this way. This way, we will manage decreased complexity. We will increase transparency because everything is done via an API, and we decrease the time to market because it will be really fast for all the people who demand it. The compliance people will say, okay, we still want to write a policy, but it's different. It says, well, you need to have an automated deployment of cloud infrastructure with infrastructure as code, and this way we will have decreased complexity because we will have templates. We'll have transparency because we can look into the code and we have a pipeline that stops automatically when there is some issue. And we have a decreased time to market because it's automated, it's quite fast and no human is involved into this process. And so also their goals are checked. And for the developers and business units, well, when they need something, they can provision it on their own, on demand, within minutes. It's only their scope, so they only need to handle their infrastructure. So they have a decreased complexity. They know totally what they need. They have infrastructure as code, so they have transparency, and of course it's quite fast. So they have also all the goals checked. So, and of course, this is highly simplified here, but it showcases that when you have isolated goals, you might come up with conflicting solutions that won't help everyone. And that when you combine and align the goals, you might come up with totally different solutions, but that still fit for everyone and in the end bring the real value for everyone. So now, again, a quick poll. And the question is, would you say that you have clear and measurable and actionable goals for your cloud transformation in your organization? And Johannes, also, I hand over to you.
Yes, first couple of people answering say somewhat, so goals, but maybe not the perfect goals or not the perfect way of operating with them. I also would like to refer back to the previous poll we did, right? I think the 2 words that were mentioned a couple of times and that stood out were alignment and value. And I think this here shows very well how much cross-functional alignment on the one hand across the different departments with their local priorities, but also alignment with value and with an overarching strategy is important. That's just one of the 2 or 3 customer examples that I would like to chip in. We have a visualization tool at Workpath where you can basically visualize dependencies between goals and where you can also make things become more apparent in the beginning, right? I can also show you this in live. Yes, it's with exemplary data, but I think you get an idea. So in Workpath, you have an ACME company here, and you see there's different kind of priorities, different goals contributing to the overall company strategy. But you also see things like this, and that is basically what you just saw on the slide. Isolated goals, some of them haven't been started, haven't been activated yet, and it's different people. Someone from IT, Lynn, seems to be the lead there, having a goal, or another one here, Lena, rather from the business perspective, the business unit, but they're not connected to the strategy, neither the cloud or the IT strategy, nor horizontally between those different goals. And just to show you the contrast here, if I go on that goal, that also seems to be a bit more mature, but you see this goal is supported by a couple of different other goals, like other teams have come together and said, like, we're contributing here. So this is a cross-functional cluster of priorities. And again, it's just one very simple example, but we really recommend visualizing those things very early and making sure that this pyramid that you've seen before from my top level strategy, IT and cloud strategy, this really can be cascaded into a visible structure where things play together and where you don't just have these local goals where everyone prioritizes their outputs, but you have something that plays together and makes sure the reasons why things fail can be identified much earlier. And with that quick example, back to you already.
So.
Perfect. Okay, great. Now I just need to find the right slide here. Okay, perfect. So what we heard in the beginning a lot about was unspecific and rather vague goals, which are maybe not completely also documented. So, and for many people that are then involved also later on in the cloud transformation, they have not the clarity and no clear direction on where to go. So that's why we're urging our customers in the beginning when we come in to make those goals really concrete and specific and easy to understand also. And we're using a specific way of doing it, which we would like to share here also as an inspiration for you on how to make your goals maybe even more concrete when you say they have only be somewhat specific so far, your goals. So what we do first is really to talk about your target group, like who's it for. And what we also heard already is like value. So we want to be more outcome oriented. So why do we actually go into the cloud and what value do we expect for our target group? And what would be the future state at the end when our goal is finished? And to have this discussion early on, also with a wider group of our stakeholders, we can see quite early in the process where are the differences and where people are quite aligned already and where do we need maybe more discussion to really come to the same page. So that's the first point where we always want to start. And actually also what we like to is like, why now? So this is like the urgency we want to emphasize here, like the problem that we actually want to solve. And this is also then later on a motivation for people who are involved. So have this discussion about why now and give the people who are executing also more context. So this can be motivating and can also already bring some light into the discussion when people have a very different perspective also on this point, because we come back to different solutions that we build in. If we have a different understanding of the problem, this could also then lead later on to different perspectives on what is the right solution. And then obviously we would like to have the discussion on how can we measure our success? So what are our success criteria and what is the desired impact that we want to make later on? We know data is a problem for many companies, but we would urge you really to still have the discussion and then later on discuss on how you get the data, because it's already a very, very valuable discussion to have the same perspective also on how do we measure success. So what are our criteria here? And the last one is something what we have also seen in the past, that sometimes we stop at this point, but we do not completely translate it into execution measures. And obviously, if we are not doing something on what we want to achieve, then it always will only be a dream. So we need to be concrete on what kind of initiatives that are linked to this and how can we actually work towards those goals. So always we would recommend to not stop at this point, but then translate these goals actually really into the execution measures that are relevant to get to the goals you want to achieve. And yeah, I would hand over to Johannes to show us one example.
Yes, another quick example, of course, exemplary data, but how this can look and how it looks with some of our customers. And as it has been just said, I think providing a certain kind of quality standard and governance, how do we prioritize and what do we look at, is really important. So two things. Metrics, right? KPIs. We're always surprised in the earlier stages of companies that we start working with, sometimes how little there is really measurable and actionable metrics at all with regards to the cloud transformation, right? There's a lot of output, there's a lot of milestones, a lot of things, deliverables, etc. But there is actually a longer list of really important cloud KPIs. Some of them you see here now. That should provide a direction. And with Workpath, you can make them available to your most important stakeholders. And you can also see things like most of these goals are not supported by any other like contributions. Nobody seems to care about it, at least in that exemplary demo environment. Some are still on track, some are at risk. So making this available, I think, is a really important starting point. And the other thing that I would like to show you is what a team can then do, having access to that kind of infrastructure, that kind of clarity of priorities and goals, overarching outcomes, but also metrics and how do we measure success and progress. So if we are now in this business unit in Workpath, you can draft a goal and you can use our goal assistant, and it makes it easier for you to make sure you answer the right kind of questions when defining your cloud priorities. So you take a moment with your team and think about who's our customer, who's our internal stakeholder who benefits from that, what's the value we want to create with it, and what's the future state we're aiming for, right? And you can see in some of the other goals, this helps you sort of like making sure you ask yourself the right questions on scale everywhere in the organization. It raises the quality of your governance, of your planning, and I think that's the foundation for good execution, right? So that's another quick example how you can use Workpath to make these things work better. And back to you, Inken.
Perfect. Okay, so then the last thing we would like to show you is when it comes to steering your transformation is the cloud transformation roadmap that Joris also mentioned earlier. So for us, this is a very essential and key element to steer to your cloud transformation and to make it really actionable. And you can see here some typical work streams that we are working on and some first ideas of kind of the focus areas that we are using. But what we would like to highlight is, so we talked a lot about alignment around goals, and the same also applies to a roadmap. What we can see in many organizations is that each work stream individually has some kind of roadmap and some kind of planning, but we do not have like this big picture, holistic view about the roadmap because everyone's also working in different systems, using different styles. And this is all fine, but what we're missing here is then actually really have this one holistic place where everything is there, which provides transparency for all involved work streams and stakeholder groups, And that is already bringing you some views around key dependencies that we see between the different work streams. We also think that one of the most important criteria is to create a lot of transparency as early as possible in the cloud transformation. One reason is, as we said, dependencies. So you can plan and see what kind of additional work you need from different departments maybe, and they already can plan that in. But what we also want is for people who are actually working within the work stream. Usually for them, it's not usual business to work on a cloud transformation. It might be completely new for them as well. And they have also their daily business. So making sure that they have a good transparency on what needs to be done, what's expected of them, and also what they think needs to be included in terms of effort and timing. This provides a lot of help for people to actually really plan it out and know more about what kind of skills maybe are currently missing and they need to level up or get some additional support here from different departments maybe. And so that's why we say give as much transparency as you can, but obviously still be flexible. This is a longer period, as we heard, like it can be between 2 and 6 years. And so it needs to be a flexible way and needs to be changed over time. And so the last one would be what we see also a lot of time is that we have no clear ownership for different aspects. And then we always see some kind of stagnating progress. So whenever you see there's something where ownership is not clarified, we would also give you a hint here to be very specific. That is the roadmap we are using. And the last one is that a constant steering is required. We have sometimes there's a lot of energy in the beginning, a lot of motivation, but then as you heard, it's a longer process and value is not always transparent in the beginning. So what we say is we need here a lot of communication. So keep on communicating the why do we do the cloud? Because this can sometimes get lost. And then also provide transparency about also progress and the value you already generated to keep people motivated. And next one, we mention it like all the time now, alignment and collaboration. It's like the key aspect, not just in the beginning when setting goals, but constantly working towards the same roadmap, same goals. We need a lot of alignment and having these discussions. So very important. Clear ownership, make decision-making very easy, give clear goals, give implementation guidelines, but then also give a lot of freedom to work towards this, because what we see in the past or in different clients is decision-making can be a showstopper all the time. So make it as easy as possible so that you can see progress. And then obviously, we would urge you to measure your goals regularly and to reflect and also adapt if you see something is not working the way you expected it. So these would be some key principles we would like to also give you as one of the best practices to steer your cloud transformation.
Thank you very much. I think that resonates so strongly with what we experience, actually with most types of strategy, right? But I think in that particular context, even more so, it regularly is underestimated how important it is to turn this into an ongoing conversation and not just punctual check-ins every now and then. So happy to wrap it up with one last example, what companies we work with in the context of cloud strategy execution, cloud transformations do. They use our conversations to establish different series of meetings. Best case, you don't add a new meeting, but you just look at your current meeting routines and make those a bit more efficient, a bit more oriented towards the goals you're pursuing with your cloud transformation. And then, I think the question for our customers always is, how do we bring this to life? How do we make it sure it's not just some consultants working on slides, but we activate the teams? And what you can do is use like your meeting routines, and you can use Workpath to have a constant look every 2 weeks, I think is the average we see that works best, where you look at your cloud transformation goals and where you not just look at progress and confidence level, how likely it is that we can still achieve this, but where you can also add talking points, right? And we can say we're facing a blocker, or we have to make a decision here. So that is something that not just helps to react earlier and like I think course correct faster, but also it makes sure you can collect the evolution over time. And when you do a quarterly review or an annual review on the progress of your cloud transformation, you can use these data to make sure you understand what to do better in the next cadence or in the next strategy cycle. So promised, right? Just 2 or 3 examples and just a couple of minutes each. That would be the last one. And I think that's also already it with the deep dive. We have some more slides. If you could go back to the slides, I think you're in the lead. Then we just want to wrap it up with, if there are any questions, a quick Q&A. And of course, we're going to share not just all of this, what we looked at here today, but also some more content, the results from the surveys, etc. So you can have another look at it, share it with your colleagues, but also reach out if you're interested in that afterwards. So you find our contact in there. If you're interested as a viewer of this webinar, you can have access to our e-learning and get a discount. And you might want to have a look at some of our trainings that help you in the context of the topic today. And yeah, that's it. Of course, we would be really curious to continue the conversation later. And if there's any more questions, things you would like put as up as a discussion, we have around 5 to 10 minutes left. The chat is open. I know it's lunchtime, so I see first people dropping off. Can understand that as well. All right. Then if there are no more questions now, let's wrap it up. Again, thank you very much, Inken and Joris, for being here with us today. Thanks for sharing your experiences on that hot topic. And I hope to continue the conversation very soon. So thanks very much. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.